mute me so y'all don't hear me too.
Hello. Hey.
Hello.
Woohoo.
How are you guys doing?
Ooh, I am all right. Had a very long hot day here, so
Yeah,
but
and
now
it's kind of stormy.
yes, and then suddenly the storm started rolling through and I hear the rumbling, so I'm like cross the fingers on the internet because we're rural and I think you know what that's like. It's like
I do.
we're always waiting. We're like, all
Yeah,
right, no trees fall in the power lines, you know?
exactly. Yeah, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when we were doing a Monday live, we had horrible storms come through here, and I was like, oh boy. And I lost the power a couple different times, had to go out and restart my Wi-Fi router and all that stuff. So, all right.
Yeah.
So for tonight, I'm going to go over some stuff with everybody. As you can see, there's two of us. There might be three in a little bit. Both G and Robin went to Hack Your Health in Texas. Robin is in transit. Her plane's been delayed several times. So if she can jump on, she will. If she's not able to, that's okay. We'll kind of wing it. G is having some trouble with her internet working where she's at right now as well. So we'll just try to do the best that we can and see how much give you guys tonight. So tonight's Meaty Mondays is episode either 30 or 31. I have actually lost count, so I don't know. So I'm just going to say 30 or 31. And what we're going to go over tonight is lies that we have been told about red meat. So first, I just want to welcome everybody who's watching on here. And there you go.
Yay,
I just
gee.
welcome everybody, whether you're watching the live or the replay. And we just would like for you to share this out. If there's any information on here that you're like, hey, that's a good little sound nugget, I need to pass that on to somebody, that's good to do, please do that. Like it. And then, of course, if you want to follow any of us, we have our information scrolling at the bottom of the screen for our channels, and we welcome you guys to do that. So are you ready, G, or do you want us to? Because I can always do news that. Okay.
Let's start. No, let's start with news that we can
Okay.
use.
All right.
Yeah, let's start with
Okay,
that.
perfect. Yep. So I will pull that up and we're going to do news that you can use. And that is with Rhonda. And that is from, let's see, let's do this. She is Carnivore Leo. All right, here we go.
Hello, I'm Rhonda at Carnivore Leo, bringing you news you can use from the community. Is red meat healthy? Well, in today's segment, I'm going to share a short news clip from Dr. Brett Scher, who is going to share his thoughts on this subject.
Researchers at the Mayo Clinic in Arizona decided to find out if eating red meat affects a patient's mortality.
You've probably heard it time and time again that red meat can lead to heart disease, can lead to cancer, can lead to early death, and that there are plenty of studies to support that theory. But is that right? Red meat has been maligned so much by the healthcare community, it's claimed to be backed in science. But when you look at the quality of the science, does it really support the claims? We've published many different articles at Diet Doctor pointing out how the evidence doesn't match the recommendations. I can see how you would be so confused by this because it seems like every week there's a new study saying that red meat is harmful, red meat isn't harmful. Like, how do you know what to do? I'm Dr. Brett Scher, the medical director at dietdoctor.com, and I want to talk about a new study that probably helps clarify this a little bit. There's one about red meat that's so important, but then another about fat and even trans fats that I think kind of works well with this to talk about the two together. And I recently wrote a post about this at dietdoctor.com. Let's talk about this study. It was an analysis of the PURE study, which is a large, over 100,000 people from multiple continents and countries, a true global multinational study. And what they did was, it is a weak nutritional epidemiology study where the information isn't always that reliable because they fill out a food frequency questionnaire of what they ate, which is not very accurate. And then they just crunch the data to see who had heart attacks, who had strokes, who had cancer, who died early, and what were they eating. Now, what's a little bit different about this study was there was absolutely no difference from the highest red meat eaters to the lowest red meat eaters in terms of risk of cancer, death, heart disease, stroke. No difference whatsoever. That may come as a surprise to a lot of people who are concerned about red meat because other studies have shown the opposite. But here's one of the most important points I think about the study. The studies that tend to show a difference in health outcomes by the people who eat the most red meat, those studies are really conflicted by what's called healthy user bias. So when you look at the baseline characteristics of the people who eat more red meat, they tend to be less educated. They tend to make less money. They're more likely to be male rather than female. They tend to smoke more, drink more alcohol, exercise less. They eat more calories in total. They have more unhealthy life habits. So based on that and based on the low quality evidence, there's no way you can say for sure that it was the red meat and not this healthy user bias. But here's the point I'm getting at. This analysis of the PURE study appeared to not have that healthy user bias. When you look at the baseline characteristics of the lowest meat eaters and the highest meat eaters, they're pretty equivalent. It doesn't show the same consistent findings that we see on so many other trials done in the United States or in Europe or the United Kingdom. But instead, my hypothesis is that the global nature of this study kind of equaled out that or canceled out that healthy user bias. That's not proven, but I think that might be one reason why this study did not show a relationship between red meat and poor health outcomes. So, and here's another thing about nutritional epidemiology studies. If it's a well-run trial with a large number of people and it shows no association to a specific food group and negative health outcomes, then chances are there's not a very strong signal there, right? Because even if, let's just assume, yes, red meat leads to cancer and heart disease and early death, but a study of over 170,000 people didn't pick up on it, then that difference has to be pretty minuscule. Now, I would argue there's no difference at all. There's no credible science to say that red meat itself causes these negative health outcomes. So, and I think this is just one more piece of the puzzle to show that that's not the case. Now, interestingly, though, the same study also looked at processed meat. And there they did see a small increased risk. And there still wasn't a huge healthy user bias, so there was higher percentage of men and women eating more processed meat. So that's definitely one factor. What this might suggest is that the closer to its natural state meat is, the less bad or the healthier it is for you. And the more processed it is, the more other things are put in it, then perhaps that could make the difference. Because when you look at processed meat, sometimes it's loaded with sugar or soy or fillers or vegetable oils. There are other things that go into processed meats as opposed to just a steak on the grill. You know what's in it, right? So that complicates the analysis a little bit. But that's what I found so interesting. The red meat did not have any association to cancer, stroke, heart attack, death, and processed meat had a small association. All right, now let's get to this other study. It was a review of all the systematic reviews of fat from monounsaturated fat, polyunsaturated fat, and saturated fat, and even trans fat. And it tried to just bring all the evidence together and say, is there any evidence that increasing your fat intake increases your risk of cardiovascular disease, of death, of negative health outcomes? And the answer was no, there isn't. Whether it was monounsaturated fat, polyunsaturated fat, or even saturated fat, there was no statistical difference in terms of increased risk from the people who ate more of those foods.
You can find more information on this topic at dietdoctor.com. This has been news you can use from the community. Good night.
Perfect. That was good. So one of the topics that you have, first, everybody, I am in the airport. I found myself a little spot. You're going to see people walking by. This is where I am. One of the questions that I wanted to pose, because they say, does red meat cause cancer? And I wanted to address that. I was looking it up, and it's the process versus the non-process. And my feelings on that is I don't think so much in regards to the red meat as everything else that you put over in your body. And because red meat and the fat is so good for you, that's who we're going to point the finger at, because as long as we do that,
Mhm.
you'll pull back from it and other things will come into play where you can still receive um, medication and all of that. I pulled up my little research. Bullet point number one, processed versus unprocessed, right? Studies have shown that processed meats, just like what he was talking about, such as bacon, sausage, deli meats, are more strongly associated with the risk. But I say that once again, not saying that it can't happen, but I believe compound with everything else that we do. The way you cook red meat comes into play. I think of the lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, that don't have to cook their meat. When I was growing up, my family and what I knew was telling us, cook that meat, honey. If you look and saw some pink in that meat, you better send it back. Cook it till it's dead, dead. You don't want it moving at all. And that's how I grew up. But now, especially, I started changing before and I went to medium. You could not have told me that I do medium rare right now. It's like the flavor, the
Mhm.
taste, how you, like I said, how you prepare the meat. Um, the way that I cook now is so different. Whether I'm grilling, that cast iron skillet is like gold to me right now for this, the fat bites and all of that. So they say that high temperature cooking methods like grilling or barbecue can produce harmful compounds such as HCAs, polycys. I'm gonna go to school to learn all of these words. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAH, which has been linked to cancer. Once again, I'll say it again. If you are eating the standard American diet, I believe that yes, coupled with that, some things can happen to you. So consuming red meat as they teach you that consuming red meat as part of a balanced diet. Um, they encourage you to include plenty of fruits and vegetables and fiber to mitigate some of the potential risk. Once again, if you are doing all of those things and something happened, that is why they're giving that information. And then they talk about how often you eat red meat. If you're going to have it, limited once or twice a week. But I'm here to tell you, I eat red meat every day
Mhm.
with the fat. And here I am. Here I am. And here I am. And one of the last things, they talk about individual risk factors such as genetics. And a lot of times we are told and taught uh, it's hereditary. And you know, anyone in your family have heart disease, cancer. Well, normally what happens is that you're eating like them. And so if someone ended up with cancer, it's once again from the food. You guys don't have two different diets and similarities. So that is another. Then I was looking over into hold on, let me see. They talk about the cooking. All right, so here's another one, and I'll say it again: moderation and balance things out. They, you know, go ahead and do that dry chicken breast. Make you feel like you have spit cod down. The only chicken breast that I've had that's good is Church's chicken. The breast that's onto the wing. Now this is before carnivore because of the grease, but that is juicy. So maybe they did something to it. But right there out the store, I don't care how you fix that dry chicken. Uh, it's just that it is dry. So another topic that I what's wrong with nutrition research. So I I believe, right, have not done all of the research, but I truly, truly believe, like I just said to you, is that a lot of this is not the meat. The meat is getting blamed. That's like you have that
Mhm.
one um, sassy kid. And if the cup is knocked over, we all gonna blame that kid. But there was 5 other people in the room. They were just a little more sneaky with it. But I just believe that our meat is being blamed for things that it's actually healing and not destroying. Well, you come on, Nurse Laura. What you think?
Yeah, and I agree. And every time they throw out a study and they talk about, like cooking meat on a grill and it's causing this cancer, and I'm thinking back to caveman times when they just found fire, and I'm like, well, they did that over open flame. I'm pretty sure the outside of their meat had some.
But let me just
Yeah,
let me just say this. I think for us, and it does concern me, and that's why I like when I was watching Carnivore Kip and when I watched some of the cooking shows on learning how to start your fire with wood.
oh yeah,
So maybe the charcoal has, especially me, look, self light. There you go, charcoal,
yeah,
the
ugh,
lighter fluid. I think that's
yeah,
probably more of what they're talking about. So on one of his
sure,
videos, what I did, I went on and bought that little chute to have, and he said,
yep,
put them little starter things in there, do that, light
yep,
that wood, and then go from there. So once again,
yeah,
it's being blamed. They're blaming the red meat when in
yeah,
actuality, how about the chemicals that no one is blaming the fire starter and the charcoal
yeah,
bricks and all of that. They want to blame the meat, which is
yeah.
the thing that's helping you the most.
Yeah. And even if it's just the plain charcoal bricks, I believe that's usually made out of compressed hickory and
Mm.
another style of wood. So I doubt that there's much wrong with those. I'd say it's probably
Mm-hmm.
more when you add the starter fluid because it's
Mm-hmm.
it's a carcinogen. I mean, it just is. So that'd be that. And then with like the nutritional research that I was taught, like in nursing school, it just was everything was against meat. Vegetables were the only way to go.
Mhm.
Remember I talked about how our nutrition teacher kept telling us about you have to get your Bunsen burner up to this many degrees to burn this, and that's how you burn fat and carbohydrates and protein. And I'm like, but there's nothing inside me that gets to that heat. So how does that calorie count? So it kind of goes along with that. I think they run out of ideas, but they have to be paid. They're sitting up in these big universities and they need a job. So I feel like they just go out and randomly, I mean, they spend millions and millions of dollars trying to figure out how insects mate. Who gives come on. So I just think they're bored and I think they have to find something to do. And when you see people who have been doing this for 15, 20, 30 years, or Maggie, who's been doing it for like 60 years, come on. I'll take her health over the people who are eating the other way, the standard American diet, any day. So, all right.
Mhm.
Next, let's
Well,
go with Rebecca.
well, and I was going to say too on that note, and he touched on it in the video, but just one of the things to always remember anytime that they're citing research studies, this research study, that research study, when it comes to nutritional studies, is you got to look into where they got this information. And I hate that we have to always dig down that rabbit hole. But he pointed out
Yep.
these are not controlled studies by any means. These are
No.
either people are self-reporting, which means we're relying on your memory of how much you ate and that you're honest about it, which are two separate things. Or
Rare.
they're like taking a food log, and then of course that's all about just them being honest and being consistent about that. So it's very that alone makes it kind of iffy from a scientific standard when you're thinking about that reporting standard. And then they're cherry picking out what to blame on the factors. So like in terms of meat, if I have a half a pound of ground beef all by itself for lunch, and Laura has a double quarter pounder with cheese, fries, and a Coke, we are reporting the same amount of protein consumption. But clearly, we could say that there's a lot of things if Laura is unhealthy, what we could blame on it. We could blame the processed foods, we could blame the carbs, we could blame the sugars, we could blame, McDonald's, whatever. They fry their foods. I mean, but they always pick on we're going to blame the burgers. We're going to actually blame the protein in it. And they're never in these studies looking at people that are exclusively eating meat and separating out all of the other things that they're eating with it. And that's just, it's not real. As someone with a science background, it kind of just kills me a little bit, because it's very wishy-washy. It's because you can always fish something out to prove with that information, but it's so subjective.
Rebecca, we did a show where Frederick recorded me getting my results. When they say that my numbers are average, then I ask that question. Well, what's average? Where are we getting the average from? And then there's, average people in my area, in my age bracket. You can't do that to me, because we don't eat the same thing. So you're holding me to the standard American diet, and that's where you're doing with my numbers. So ironically, my doctor has sent me multiple messages for me to get back into the office, because I really think that she wants to see how I'm doing, pull some more blood, but she's not pushing me for take a statin. She knows that's not happening at all. And if anything, I'm getting ready to flip her my way. Yeah, I like what Frederick put in the comments talking about the charcoal bricks. Hey, Paul. That looks like a question for you, Laura. Yeah, he was talking about their compressed pieces of charcoal used primarily for grilling. Yeah, they're made from powdered charcoal and just kind of pushed over in there. Yeah.
And there are different forms too, because you can go to some Farm and Home, Farm and Fleet stores that do have more of the natural hickory briquettes that are just the compressed. I think down in Missouri, there's quite a few places that you can get the more of the natural stuff. So let's see, where do we get 9 essential amino acids, real fat, soluble vitamins? Well, I mean, eggs, the egg yolk is about the only other place that I know that has the
No, I
majority
think
of the
that Paul
amino
is saying,
acids.
I think what he's saying is, we're getting it from red
Right.
meat, and if not, like,
Right.
so
Yeah.
look, the
Well,
vegans and all of that, where are they getting it from?
they're getting it because what they're doing is they're doing all these other powders and shakes and 15 different things, and $1,000 worth of supplements a month. I had a vegan that I'll be working with this week on my website, and I mean, it was $1,000 a month for her vitamins and minerals and all these things that she was taking in, like liposomally, which is a better form of taking them, and with the fats, the ones that need the fat. But I was like, $1,000. I'm like, you know how much ribeye you can buy with $1,000?
Yeah.
I
But
was
they say
dying.
this
I
is
was like, oh,
expensive. Yeah, they say
yeah,
this is
no,
expensive. Yeah, right.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and in the beginning, I think when you first kind of transition over, there is a little bit of an upfront cost. Um, but once you get into it and you're not eating, 3 giant meals a day, snacks in between and all that, I do think it gets definitely better. So
And
that's what I
going through
think. All right, Rebecca.
drive-through. Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. All right. So my segment, we're talking about what I've heard about eating meat only while being pregnant. Since that is, if you didn't catch it last time, I am 20 weeks pregnant with my carnivore baby.
Yes.
Carnivore
And
baby boy. Our
yes, the carnivore baby
nephew.
boy. I'm so excited. And basically, I mean, once you start talking about eating anything during pregnancy, and like all of the caution flags go up. So the traditional things that I have heard, I mean, while pregnant and eating, for one, they are like overly cautious in recommendation. And I think that's just probably for liability's sake. I don't know, because they're telling women like not to eat sushi. Which I remember my first pregnancy, they're like, oh no, you can't have sushi at all. And I'm like, do Japanese women give up sushi? And they're like, no. And I'm like, so why do I have to give up
Hello.
sushi? Hello. I was like,
Where they talk
this is
about the
very,
mercury.
yeah. Well, it even, they're more worried about food poisoning than anything.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. And so that's why you'll read them and they'll always tell you to make sure your meat is cooked super thoroughly. Don't have anything that's less than well done. And
But let me ask you this real quick, Rebecca. After you have the baby, they're not worried about food poisoning to you?
right, right. It's like, and
Nope.
food poisoning has no real um, specific concern to the baby other than mom is sick. Like it's not. I mean, if you the one concern they bring up is like E. coli. If you get exposure to E. coli, that can cause miscarriage, but it can also cause death. So it's like E. coli is not as a something to like. If I was worried about the E. coli contamination in my meat, it has nothing to do with being pregnant or not. Whether I would be weird. Uh, hesitant of it. It's a dangerous bacteria, period. So it's anyway. I even before carnivore, I would rant about stuff like this because they just put all these weird extra um, burdens on pregnant women for like no reason other than a lot of old wives' tales, even in medical circles, for sure. So,
And they want to
so
sell
that
a book.
and they want to sell a book, they want to sell more supplements, and
Yeah.
what I was doing some reading to see how much they were talking, specifically people talking about currently red meat. So right now what I'm seeing is women are encouraged to eat like 70 grams of protein while pregnant. My midwives have always recommended like 100 to 120 grams a day. And when I was pregnant with my twins, she recommended I try to get 200 grams a day. So to me, I can't even imagine on a trying to keep it down to 70. And then a lot of, if you go and just read the blogs and the little snippets from health clinics and things like that, they all say lean meats, avoid red meat, and stick to chicken primarily, chicken breast, things like that for the little bit of protein. And it, for one, yeah, there's definitely the yuck factor. And when I try to dig into the why, the basic why is, well, duh, we know red meat's terrible for you, so it's a good time to give it up. And then they'll list all the great things that are in it. Like, it does have protein and zinc and iron and things like that you need, but you can get those elsewhere, is really what it keeps coming back around to. And so it's just sort of this blanketed idea. Well, we all know red meat's bad. So, and you want to be healthy when you're pregnant. So make sure and eat as little red meat as possible. And there's not a lot of, I mean, for one, you'll find almost no actual research around this because it is considered very, you can't studying pregnant women for hardly anything is very, very, I wouldn't say taboo, but there's just so much legal risks around it. Nobody wants to be the one that studied something and steered women towards doing something wrong while they're pregnant. It's just one of those areas where they're very, very hands off. And so all of these studies are just pure conjecture from this thing or this other thing. I read one that said there was indication that red meat increases your chances of having gestational diabetes. I was like trying to follow their logic through it, and it was just so bizarre. And I've seen this turn in my, I've been having babies for 16 years now, and they now are teaching that gestational diabetes has nothing to do, almost nothing. On one hand, they'll say it has nothing to do with nutrition, that you just get it randomly or not, and it's luck of the draw. But I had always understood it was due to bad diet and overconsumption of carbohydrates and sugars, and that some women just don't tolerate it as well. And now they're either saying that it's random or it's meat. And I was like, I'm having a hard time buying that. So I think it's just, and maybe, I think it's just this whole momentum of propaganda that meat is evil and meat is the source of all health woes. And
Hey, Rebecca, you just said
yes,
something that made me think of something, and I wanted to pose this. You said you were trying to follow the logic. So I remember Laura saying, like when you put butter in your body 98 degrees, it's going to like melt. It's not getting your body is the 98 degrees, so where would it clog? So,
Mhm.
Laura, help me understand this, make it make sense. Why do people talk about a hard fat versus a softer fat when it's all going in to my stomach? The acid, the heat,
Mhm.
what is the difference? It's like, it's got, yeah, help me understand that.
Yeah. Well, that basically that's due to the junk science back with Ansel Keys, that he did. And actually, he had all of the science that showed that those countries that did eat a lot of the animal fats and things like that didn't have any increased heart disease, stroke. That's what I just explained that to a patient today. I said, "You've been eating this fake butter for 25 years." She says, "Actually 30." And I said, "And you've had 2 heart attacks and a stroke." So it's like, obviously, that's not
You got the
that's the
salt.
cause if you gave
Mhm.
up all the other stuff, if you gave up the butter and all that stuff. And so I mean, I just always tell people to look back through, if you look at the whole thing of evolution, right now we're in this part, last 150 years, but if you look at all these years, it was meat and fats and occasional berries when they were ripe on the trees. So I, it's just because it's propaganda. And as I always say, the Food and Drug Administration and the USDA are bought and paid for, as all the rest of the alphabet agencies are. The Food and Drug Administration has the food entity that is what says is able to be out in the human consumed food. So they approve the food you get to eat. Then you get the metabolic diseases from the foods that they said was okay to eat. And then the drug portion of the FDA approves the medications to treat the disease you got from the metabolic bad food that you ate. So it's just ass backwards. It really is. And I think if most people sit back and look at history and truly look, they would see that there's no way that that's the truth. So that's my feeling on it.
Mhm. Yep. Now, so on a just kind
I
of on
forgot I was muted. Thank you, because I'm chewing.
You're fine.
um, so just on the personal note, from my experience, I really struggled, especially through the first trimester, to eat fatty meats. It was very like it made me. I have never had morning sickness in any other pregnancy, and I was nauseous in this pregnancy. Um, my midwife said it's a sign of really high hormones, which is a really great. It's
Yes.
generally associated with healthier pregnancies. I was like,
Yeah.
this is not fun. And and
Yeah.
it was very mild compared to what a lot of women have. So I can't even say that it was like I wasn't throwing up, I wasn't miserable, I could eat. um, but I struggled to eat red meat, and then definitely fatty cuts of meat. It made me really nauseous, and so I did. And I had to eat a lot more often. So normally I would eat one, maybe two large meals a day. During that first trimester, I would eat like one piece of chicken. And then a couple hours later, I'd eat another piece, because it was all I could get down at a time without getting sick. And then I ate a lot of fish during that time as well, a lot of salmon and leaner things. And I mostly just had to trust in the fact that the way we have done fats in general in our family is we eat the fats until they don't taste good. And that's kind of our body telling us that you're full. It's like, when you eat little fried fat bites or the really fatty ribeye, and that first chunks of it are like the best things you've ever tasted in your life. And then sometimes you get to the end of it and you're like, it is just not, I'm just not feeling it anymore. It's just your body saying like, I'm good right now. I'm good with this amount of fat. And so I just had to kind of trust that I wasn't needing as much in that moment. I would try to add a little bit of butter and just little things like that, but I mostly had to play it by ear with the nausea level. And then I ate a lot more dairy than I normally do, because I was able to eat the cottage cheese um, and just some of the other cheeses, and because it was just trying to get through that. So, and speaking I've spoken to, I think, 2 other women who were carnivore going into a pregnancy, and very similar experiences on that front of having to be a little bit more flexible on their, and just changing up what they could eat just based on how they felt. And so I would say just keep that in mind if you come across or know anyone that has questions about that. Is it will likely be different, and you just have to listen to your body and what you need. But I didn't need carbs or sweets or any of those other. I don't need fruits and vegetables. That definitely wasn't what I was craving. So, but and is it safe?
What about breastfeeding?
Yeah. So breastfeeding, there's actually been a lot of women. I say a lot. If you start looking around on like the Facebook groups, there's some carnivore family groups and things like that. There are quite a few women who have breastfed while carnivore. And it is, I think it's the healthiest thing you could do. Again, there's no studies on any of these things. So you can't say, like, show me the studies. There's just no studies on any of this. There's no studies on carnivore diets pretty much in general. But it is, I was breastfeeding when we went carnivore. There was no issue in drop of production. There was no, your body makes the breast milk nutritious, kind of almost in spite of whatever you eat. So it's, what they have done is they've done lots of studies on women who eat healthy versus not healthy while breastfeeding. And it honestly has very little effect on the quality of the milk. Your body's going to make the right recipe unless you are nutritionally starving in some way. The milk is going to come out high quality, almost no matter what you eat. Now it will can have like quote unquote contaminants in it if you're eating a lot of, and that's where people will experience if they eat certain foods, it makes the baby's stomach upset. It's not a nutritional thing. It's just might be that the certain types of proteins that are coming through from the mother's diet upset the baby's system, because their systems are more delicate, more sensitive. But so generally speaking, if mother is healthy, the breastfeed milk's going to be just fine. And the biggest thing to up production is to just nurse more often, nurse on demand, drink lots of water. Those are always going to be the biggest pieces of advice I give people. So.
Yep. I agree. And I was unfortunate that, I did keto, and it was a higher meat, fat to vegetable ratio when I had my son, but I had no problems with milk supply, any of that. I had better luck that time than 5 years before that when I was doing the standard American diet, and it was not as high a quality. Literally the color of it even was different because I would pump some. And I'd be like, boy, that almost has a blue tinge to it. And I was thinking, yeah, I had Skittles. So I'm like, I'll bet the dye went through, what else would have made it be a blue color? It was just odd. So yeah, I'm just glad that I'll never eat like that again in my lifetime. So for my segment, what I went with was, does red meat contain enough vitamins and minerals? So I'm going to go through some of the main vitamins and minerals that are in red meat. And then if you guys have any questions, throw them in the comments and we will get to those. So first and foremost, if anybody is anemic, and yes, I used to be anemic, I can promise you that eating this lifestyle will definitely get that turned around. It may take some time, but it will turn it around. It is crazy. So the main thing, one of the highest amounts of minerals is iron. Red meat, especially beef and lamb, are very rich in heme, which is the natural form of iron. It is going to be the easiest way for you to absorb it. It's already kind of put into the absorbable amount, versus the iron that's found in plants or in supplements. Most of those are not going to be where you can get that same amount that you need. And really, iron is very essential in the body. It helps with transporting oxygen in the blood and supporting energy production. So a lot of us that I have worked with, They're like, oh, I've been anemic for all these years and my B12, I'm pernicious anemic. Or people that have like the gastric bypass or the sleeve, a lot of times they're pernicious anemic and their B12 is just in the tank a lot of times. And I would say that most of those people, if they did this lifestyle, even with that decreased way of absorbing, I'll bet you that their numbers are going to be pretty much within good range. My B12 was actually above 2000 when they did my lab. She goes, oh, your B12 is really good. And I said, oh, you're not going to tell me to back off of anything? She goes, there's nothing that shows that there's any problem for you having, high amounts of B12. She goes, you probably have energy like all day. And I said, I do. And she goes, well, keep doing what you're doing. And I was like, I wasn't going to change it even if you told me to. So another nutrient is zinc. It has the red meat is one of the highest sources of zinc. It's an essential mineral that is really important with our immune function. It also has a lot to do with how our wound healing takes, how it works, also how the DNA synthesis happens in the body. So many people, and I would say if we tested every American walking around right now, I'd say the majority are zinc, magnesium, a whole bunch of deficiencies because it's not in the food supply anymore. A lot of our foods, if you looked at them from like 65 years ago, even an ear of corn, if you looked at the vitamin and mineral content of that from 60, 65 years ago, it had a lot of those trace minerals and vitamins in it from pulling it from the ground. But that was when we grew corn that was knee high by 4th of July. Well, now it's like shoulder high by 4th of July. So it's growing so fast, it's been genetically modified, that it doesn't have that. And we've stripped the ground and they just keep doing the same things to the ground. So with zinc, it says many people are deficient in this mineral. Animal products provide most of the zinc in U.S. diets. Meat, poultry, and fish provide the most bioavailable forms of zinc. Another one is the one I just kind of talked about, which is B12. It is exceptionally high in your red meat, especially beef and lamb again, which is an essential vitamin that we need for partly food digestion. Part of it is for red blood cell formation, which is extremely important, and for DNA synthesis. So, animal products, including dairy, are primarily the best sources of vitamin B12 that most people get, even if they're eating the standard American diet. They are getting some through those things. Plant-based options are more limited. Um, some B12 can be found in those shiitake mushrooms and some algae type products. So vegetarian or vegans usually do have to supplement that extremely to be able to get enough of it in. And even that, unless it's a methylated form of B12, I doubt that they're really going to get a whole lot of that. I don't think they're going to convert that very well. Another one is selenium, which I love. During the whole COVID craziness, that was one of the things I took as a supplement during when I was working in the COVID unit. I did the dreaded hydroxychloroquine, and I'm still alive to talk about it. Just in case anybody out there doesn't know, you can take it and survive. I did zinc, K2D3, vitamin C, selenium, and quercetin. And so those were things that I took. So red meat contains selenium. It's a trace mineral with antioxidant properties that help protect the cells from damage and support the thyroid function. So seafood, organ meats, and Brazil nuts are foods that are actually high in selenium. So even if somebody's following ketogenic versus even carnivore, if they're doing some of those things, they're going to be able to get enough of that in there. So another one is B6, which is another name for that is niacin. Red meat, eggs, those provide a lot of this. It's very important to have the B6 for brain health, metabolism, and immune function. So foods that are really high in B6 are fish, chicken, pork, beef, Yes, avocados and pistachios. For those of you who partake in those things, no matter what your diet is, you will be getting some of that. Then red meat is a good source of, like I said, of all of these, including, like, I know a lot of people talk about, oh, I know it has all these good vitamins in it. Um, the beef liver or deer liver or lamb liver. I've never had lamb liver, so I don't know. They do have a stronger taste, and I'm not a fan of eating it by myself, like, or just by itself. I know some people can do it and they don't cook it hardly at all, and that's how they eat it. Um, I just
Wait a minute, are you
can't do it.
talking, you're talking liver period
Yeah.
or
Yes.
lamb liver?
Liver.
Now see,
Any.
yeah, liver, yeah,
Yeah.
chicken liver
Yeah.
is good, beef liver is good, and those are the only
Yeah.
livers that I've pretty much had, and I can
Yeah.
eat that all yeah, yeah, I can throw down on some liver.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
actually, when I make my broth, put a little
Oh yeah, that's
chicken
right.
liver in it. Yeah, it
Yep,
just
I
gives
remember.
it
Yeah.
enough kick and flavor. Yeah.
Yeah. And
But
what I
Laura,
do with mine, just because I don't like the flavor of it, is I grind mine up and I put
Mhm.
it in with a big, massive pound, like 10 pounds of burger so that it's not
Mhm.
quite so strong. I can taste it. I can smell it when I'm cooking, but it's not like tire tasting to me.
Yeah. Mhm.
Laura,
Mhm.
have you seen any of the discussions surrounding? So when you're talking about the liver, that's this eating the organ meats is probably one of the areas of kind of controversy in carnivore community. Is do you have to have organ meats, and is there ability to, or and is it possible to have too much
You can
of the
finish
organ
that.
meats?
Yes. Yep. So I don't think you absolutely have to have it, but I do think if we try to think back to our ancestors, what did they do? And a lot, I mean, that's kind of the first things they did was some of the organ meats. Then they went on to the muscle meats and stuff like that. So that's, I mean, so there are reasons to do it, but I can tell you, you can get too high of vitamin A. And I have had people that have reached out to me that are like, they've been carnivore for a long time and their hair's just falling out. And they're like, I did this a little when I first transitioned. What do you think's going on? And I said, well, it could be toxic vitamin A level. I said, how much are you taking? And they said, oh, I take a supplement and I've been adding beef liver in every week. And I'm like, yeah, that's too much. Like, lay off the supplement, maybe cut down the liver to a little bit less than that. I had a lady who was talking about hot flashes, and once she kind of cut back on that, she did it. Now, you can always, if somebody just can't stomach it, can't afford it, there is like, I can't remember the name of the company. It has a cow on the front of it, and it's, but anyway, it was desiccated liver that they put in capsules. So I suppose you could try that and see if that helps if you feel like you need it. But I don't think it's going to make or break you one way or the other doing the carnivore. I think you'd be able to do just fine. I mean, I don't know. I always look at that Maggie because she's like 80 something and she looks freaking crazy, amazing good. And I'm like, I wonder if she eats liver. Like, how does she do? But
Well,
I didn't
one
do
of the
liver for a long time. Go ahead.
I was gonna say one of the I like looking at natural ratios of things or natural, like, how would we do this if we weren't being told what to do and if we didn't have access to unlimited amounts of everything all the time. And so if you think
Right.
about it, there's one liver per cow. So in the time that your family would consume a cow is roughly about the amount of liver you probably need, quote unquote. And so anything,
Yes.
the same with if you're going to eat the kidneys or the heart or anything like that, is they would not, historically, people would not have had the ability to eat liver every single day. They would have had,
Right.
that deer liver, there would have been one per deer, and it's smaller. It's, the chickens, there's one little teeny tiny one per chicken. So you butcher up a bunch of chickens and you get your one meal of all those chicken livers, and you don't have any more until next butchering round. It's just how it is. And
Yeah.
I know if people are interested in more in that. I know Dr. Bart Kay talks about this periodically. It's kind of one of his like pet peeve topics. He can name a couple of prominent former carnivore personalities that he thinks that the symptoms that they were struggling with were from overconsumption of
Yep.
organ meats.
Yep.
So,
Nope. I agree. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. And I would say that even because I had bought some calf liver at my Fairway place, and I had ground it up, and then I had my deer, and I had her liver and also the kidneys, which the kidney is wonderful. I could eat that mixed in with the meat all day long and had no problem. But even with that, I just felt a little off, like I had done too much of it. And I was like, I don't feel like I need quite this much. And it didn't taste as good to me either. So I
Yes,
think that's the other thing, is to
that's an
pay attention
indication.
to if it tastes good, if it seems good, then you're
Mhm.
probably good. Another thing that I wanted to say too, back on what you were talking about, how these nutrition experts paid by Pfizer and everybody else talks about the scariness of eating like sushi and the farm fresh eggs that haven't had the bloom cleaned off of them. I ain't never washing the bloom off of it ever. I crack the egg and away we go. I still have an appendix, so maybe that's a worrisome thing for people who've had that taken out, because that is something the appendix is to do, is to help with those kinds of things. But I just think that trying to make things as unnatural just
Mhm.
doesn't seem like it's working for the humanity. I mean, if you
Yeah,
look at the kids, it's just, and it's worse every single day. I'm seeing kids walking around with CGMs on their arm, and they're not a type 1. And they're at the grade school playing
mhm.
outside, and I'm just like, what have we done to these people? And what have we done to our next generation? That's the scary thing for me. I'm just like, oh. So I'm so
I know.
glad to see people like you that have these families, and good sized families, that you're making a difference with them, and they're going to reach out. And even if they don't stay with it when they first move out, I guarantee you they will end up back to it. I do. I
Mhm.
just believe that. They,
I think I think so. I think it's because you set the tone for what their normal is. I know a couple of mine that they look forward to the day when they can just binge on something, and I'm like, you're gonna get sick. So, look forward to that or not. But I know that their baseline taste buds are gonna be to eat meat. And then,
yeah,
I always tell people too. And at that point, they'll be adults. They'll be able to make their own decisions. And I can at least know that if they start to not feel well, if they start to gain unwanted weight, they have side
right.
effects, they know better, and they know how to go back to a way that's going to make them feel better. And so they will at least have that as a foundation, rather than I don't know why I'm 22 and I'm sick and my menstrual cycle's not crazy and my hormones are all off the charts, and you know
Rebecca, I'm so glad you just said that right there. That from for you guys that don't know, I'm sitting in the Delta Lounge, trying not to interrupt everybody. So
Mhm.
my mic is muted, but that's one of the things that I heard. I'm headed back from Hack Your Health, and we're gonna do. Frederick and I are gonna do a show about everything, but that was the thing that I heard and I didn't realize so many people suffered from not being able to conceive. And of course, we
Mhm.
had Dr. Kiltz there and everything. And it's like, once you change your diet, I mean, there were people in our carnivore community that were bodybuilders. We saw the pictures and stuff. Got with Kiltz, literally her system had shut down. She started the carnivore diet, and I want to say she said like 3 months later got pregnant. Unfortunately, they lost her first one, but then turned back around. They got pregnant again, and she was there with the baby. So I'm saying for
No.
those of you that are having fertility issues, this this is it.
Yeah.
This is it.
and
That,
and I can speak to that with my experience too. And maybe we'll
mhm.
go into more in another show, but just I had
Mhm.
already, and then
Okay, well, you talk,
Oh,
Laura, until her signal is, yeah,
back.
thank you
Go.
guys. Thank you guys so much. And then once our daughter has this baby, that'll be 3 boys and 3 girls for the grandkids. So if they stop, I ain't
Cool.
mad.
Eh,
Yes,
That's what
because
I said. I'm done.
I have 3 favorites on both sides. There you go. Yeah.
There you go.
You got,
Uh,
look, I have
yep.
one that I say is the favorite oldest, the favorite baby. Yeah, you the favorite middle one. Yeah. She said, I'm the only middle one. Oh, she's
Yep.
having some issues. Well,
Yep.
listen, I have appreciated this. I am going to back out. Hopefully she finishes, but let me just say, because
Okay.
we have one more flight to take. But oh, there you go. But
There we go.
She's back.
not finished. Go ahead,
So,
finish.
okay. So the short version of it is that almost 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with something called adenomyosis. Most people have never heard of that. It's the stepsister of endometriosis, all the same symptoms, basically, all the same lack of treatment options, pretty much. And so we were actually discussing having a hysterectomy by that winter. And because I was basically given the option of you can try all of these things, most of them never work for anybody. This will get worse and unpleasant. And your choices are either, you can just get, you can struggle with it for years. You're probably eventually just going to have a hysterectomy. So that was kind of where we're at. Scheduling didn't work. And because of our business and our life, I couldn't do it if it wasn't in the winter. And so the next spring, I was like, well, I'm going to have to wait. We'll deal with it next winter. I'll just tough it out through this year. And then that June is when we started carnivore. And I was experienced enough improvement that I was like, let's hold off on the hysterectomy coming up because maybe this will help. Maybe it won't. I have no idea, but it can't hurt to try. And basically, my symptoms just never got worse. And they're supposed to get progressive and more intrusive. And they did not get worse. And around another year and a half later, symptoms never ever got worse. They just stayed the exact same. And I decided I'm just going to tough this out because the symptoms will go away once you get to menopause. And I'd rather get to menopause with my uterus if I can
Yes.
help it. That was the goal.
Yes.
And then lo and behold, because I didn't think I was able to get pregnant while having this issue, you can, but it's very difficult. And because of what's happening in the uterus, embryos do not implant very well. But lo and behold, I got pregnant, and here we are 20 weeks into the pregnancy. And when I talked to Dr. Kiltz about this, he's like, it absolutely is a sign of, it's a healing factor, is basically, especially if it's not extremely advanced, that eating this way has made it so that I could get pregnant again at 42 years old. So that is my
For those
true
that don't
story.
know, she's pregnant, and we're
Yes.
the aunties, and so we have a nephew coming.
Yes, we
Awesome.
do.
All right. And Frederick, he says, do you have any advice for my 28-year-old daughter who's having her first baby? Oh, always so much advice. I always go for try to think about the things that you would do that feel the most natural if you didn't have all the experts telling you what is best. So that is kind of the mode that we go with. So it's respond to your baby when they cry, have them sleep very close to you. Don't feel like you have to have lots of time away if you don't like spend lots of time bonding. Breastfeeding is a really, really high priority. It's those kinds of things, and just relish that time of bonding with your baby in the beginning, because there's ample evidence besides just, it obviously seems intuitive, that those first months are so crucial for that bonding and for that, what it does for mom, what it does for baby. And then, there's going to have lots of experts telling you all the things that you're supposed to do, and that changes like every 6 months. So if it feels unnatural, then don't do it. And just think about how women used to how they used to do it 100 years ago. It was much more intuitive and much more by just osmosis from other good parents around them, rather than read all the books and they'll stress you out. don't stress out.
Listen, Frederick said, okay, what about food? Because I guess he's going to play this part for her.
Mm-hmm. As food, I'll say breastfeeding is, I'm in the breast is best. Yes, is formula. If you can't avoid it, that's pretty much what it's for. It's for when breast milk's not available. It's very hard to prioritize breastfeeding in our busy world and society, but it is so worth it on a nutritional level.
I
There's
prefer her
nothing.
to pump.
Yep. And then
She just
bring
going to
in
have
pumping.
to pump it. Yeah,
Mhm.
she's going to have to.
And
And welcome to the saggy boob gang.
yeah. And pumping is hard.
Okay.
And so don't, if that's something that's a necessity to incorporate the pumping into it, just know going into it, it's not easy, but I know many women who have done it. You got to be really habitual about it. You've got to have a routine.
Yep.
I have a friend who's a lawyer. She was like a mad pumper, but she had like on her phone, she had pictures of her baby. She had things that smelled like her baby with her that would help with the letdown. And she would pump at the exact same times throughout her day. And so that, because your body needs those certain signals, it's a very, very hormonal. And so she pulls out, she can pull out a picture of her baby and she starts to want to pump.
Yep.
So yeah, so those kinds of things. And then breastfeed. I mean, worldwide, women breastfeed up until babies are 3 years old. In the US, for some reason, we start weaning when they're, it's way,
because we got to
early.
get them on the standard American diet.
Right.
Yes,
We got to hurry
exactly.
up and get them on.
So,
yeah.
So, I mean, I encourage at least aim for a year and a half, and then you can decide after that, and just know that you're not going to be breastfeeding 8 times a day when they're a year old. It's not as big of a part of your life. And that is a big thing. And when you introduce food, we always introduced, even before carnivore, we only used whole foods that I made at home. We never did baby food or any processed foods at all. And now with this one, it'll just be meats basically. And even that we introduced with my other ones before. They would eat egg yolks, and I would make yogurts and things like that. And then when we'd have chicken, I just pull off a chunk of the chicken, let them have the chicken, and they would gnaw on it and just waiting until they're ready. This is like a whole bunch of information at once, but this idea that they need to start eating solids at 4 months, 6 months old, they don't need it. It's just more calories, and most of the stuff that they want you to add is like rice cereal. I mean, it's a completely, there's no nutrition in it. It's just calories.
No.
So
yeah.
So I just think
all right.
if it's going to be anything that's taking the place of breast milk, it needs to be nutritionally valuable. That's kind of the rule of thumb we would use. So
there you go.
And that's
all right.
More like at 7, 8, 9 months old.
Yep.
So
we did it, guys.
Yes.
Another episode.
Your PSA.
Woo woo. Yes.
I know, down. And we appreciate everybody. So let me see. Like I said, be on the lookout. Listen, guys, let me make the announcement. Dr. Kiltz is coming with the FeLions.
Woo.
Yeah. Yep. So we got Dr. Kiltz coming on. We had and Dr. Sean Drake. I did the cold plunge. I can't just tell y'all everything. You see how tired I am when I say to you. But they coming to the show. We got some good stuff coming. So that's what's going on in this neck of the woods. Laura, somebody said for you to check your email when you get out of here. Renee,
I got it.
So,
yes.
All right. Well,
thank you,
I'm
Renee.
out. You are.
Me too.
Yep. You out. You out. We're good.
All
Until
right.
next week,
Good.
everybody.
We will
Bye,
see
ladies.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.